Cain, a central figure in biblical narratives, is presented as the firstborn of Adam and Eve, marking the early steps of humanity. His relationship with Abel, his younger brother, becomes crucial in the episode of the sacrifice to God. In an act of devotion, both offer their products to God, such as fruits of the earth, sheep, and other items that were very important at the time. However, divine acceptance falls exclusively on Abel's offerings, leaving Cain's offerings rejected. Explore these details with us as we unravel the mysteries of this intriguing biblical passage. The reason for the divine refusal remains an intriguing mystery, triggering various interpretations over the centuries. Some theories speculate about the nature of the offerings, while others suggest a possible negative attitude in Cain's heart as the determining factor. The rejection provokes a growing sense of bitterness in Cain, culminating in the first human tragedy recorded in the Bible. Driven by jealousy and anger, Cain commits the terrible act of fratricide, taking Abel's life. This event, besides representing the first exposure of human fragility and the gravity of sin, echoes through the pages of history, leaving an indelible mark on the biblical narrative. God's response to Cain is marked by punishment, manifesting his wrath by cursing Cain and marking him, creating a visible sign of his transgression. Cain, now destined to bear not only the physical curse but also the psychological and emotional consequences of divine punishment, lives in exile that goes beyond solitude. Imagine being marked by a divine curse that condemns you to a life of solitary wandering. Under this terrible sentence, you are destined to be a wanderer, roaming the ends of the earth, removed from the comforting presence of society and divine proximity. The curse imposes profound isolation, where each step is a solitary journey and every landscape a silent witness to his condition. As he traverses unknown paths, the weight of the curse becomes a constant burden, and loneliness a persistent shadow. The pages of the Bible record Cain's concern with the burden of his curse, fearing mortal reprisals from those who might encounter him. Cursed by God and fearing being targeted for retaliation for his acts, Cain might have projected his anxieties onto a future scenario, imagining the possibility of encountering other human beings seeking revenge for his crimes. The nature of the curse, condemning him to be a solitary wanderer, might have left him vulnerable and apprehensive about the external environment. In response to this apprehension, God places a mark on Cain, ensuring his protection against any mortal vengeance. This divine act not only preserves Cain's life but also symbolizes divine mercy, a gesture that transcends strict justice. The mark, a visible sign of his condemnation, also becomes a protective shield, offering a chance for redemption. Among the ramifications of his actions, an intriguing question arises for the more skeptical. Who were these others that Cain so feared? Could there have been more descendants of Adam and Eve besides Cain and Abel? The answer to this peculiar question can be found by continuing to watch the video, where we will reveal fascinating information. In chapter 4, verses 16 and 17, Cain, though wandering as a vagabond, finds a woman and establishes a marital relationship. From this union, a son named Enoch is born, marking the beginning of a new generation descending from Cain. Surprisingly, Cain not only survives the divine punishment but also stands out remarkably. He makes the bold decision to build a city and peculiarly names it after his son Enoch. This decision demonstrates Cain's firm purpose to forge a legacy and establish a community, challenging the adversities imposed by his wandering condition. However, it is precisely at this point that questions begin to multiply, further amplifying the mystery surrounding the story. The biblical text curiously omits explicit details about how and with whom Cain established his marital relationship. In verse 17, we encounter only the vague information that Cain knew his wife. The speculation about the possible existence of other human beings besides Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel during this period emerges as an interpretation aimed at filling the gaps in the biblical narrative. This hypothesis seeks to address intriguing questions related to the expansion of the human population in Cain's time. Amid this scenario of uncertainties, a multitude of interpretations flourishes in the search for answers to these questions. The enigma about the details of Cain's life after his punishment only intensifies the intrigue surrounding this biblical narrative. A less conventional approach dares to explore the possibility that God independently created other human beings besides Adam and Eve's family. The defense of this theory suggests that for the rapid multiplication of humanity, a significant contingent of people would be necessary, difficult to account for with only Adam and Eve's direct descendants. This perspective arises from the intriguing attempt to harmonize the biblical narrative with archaeological and anthropological evidence indicating the existence of larger human communities in ancient times. However, it is crucial to note that this interpretation is speculative and does not find explicit support in the biblical text. The Genesis narrative primarily focuses on the story of Adam and Eve's family, without unequivocally mentioning the presence of other contemporary human groups. This gap in the biblical narrative incites curious questions about the possible role of other human beings during Cain's time. The most widely accepted theory suggests that Cain may have married a sister, an interpretation based on the understanding of cultural practices and the context of the time. The richness of these theories challenges our understanding and opens space for a deeper exploration of human and divine dynamics in the story of Cain and his descendants in the biblical narrative as outlined in the book of Genesis. A less common perspective emerges by challenging the conventional belief that Adam and Eve had only Cain and Abel as children. Contrary to what many assume, the text does not strictly delimit the primordial couple's descendants, opening space for the possibility that Adam and Eve had other children not mentioned in the pages of the Bible. The absence of detailed information about Adam and Eve's progeny leaves room for intriguing speculations. The hypothesis of a larger family is based on the understanding that in that ancient era, families were considerably large, and individuals enjoyed exceptionally long lives. This theory challenges the traditional view of biblical genealogy, shedding a different light on family dynamics during Adam and Eve's time. Imagining the possibility of additional siblings to Cain and Abel arouses curiosity about the interactions and events not recorded in the sacred text. The conjecture of a broader progeny suggests that the divine purpose for humanity involved not only the main protagonists, but also a complex network of descendants. This interpretation not only adds nuances to the biblical narrative, but also prompts contemplation about family relationships and untold stories that may have shaped the setting of that distant era. Thus, considering the wealth of unexplored possibilities, we are invited to contemplate the complexity of Adam and Eve's life beyond their known children, and recognize that between the lines of history, there may be a fascinating tapestry of unrevealed events and characters. The intriguing understanding that Adam and Eve had a broader progeny receives significant reinforcement when we deepen our analysis of the biblical narrative after the tragic incident between Cain and Abel. The story continues to unfold, revealing additional details that expand our view of the primordial couple's descendants. In the book of Genesis, chapter 5, verse 4, we find a reference that not only strengthens but also considerably expands the idea of a larger family. The text mentions that Adam lived for 800 years after the birth of Seth, one of his known sons. However, the intriguing aspect is that he also had other sons and daughters during this extensive period. This biblical passage explicitly evidences the existence of a broader progeny than initially suggested, revealing a complex and richly detailed family scenario. Considering the context of the time and the long lives of individuals, the notion that Adam and Eve were parents not only to Cain and Abel but to a large progeny becomes even more plausible. The existence of other sons and daughters adds intriguing layers to the story, inciting reflections on family interactions, relationships between brothers and sisters, and individual trajectories not recorded in the main biblical narrative. Thus, by exploring the lines of the biblical text, we are invited to contemplate a more complex and rich tapestry composed not only of key events, but also of numerous threads that form lesser-known stories. Adam and Eve's journey, marked by sons and daughters not explicitly mentioned, reveals itself as a fascinating puzzle to be unraveled, suggesting that human history is much more intricate than the sacred words initially reveal. Amid the figures of Cain, Abel, and Seth within the cultural and temporal complexity of antiquity, the practice of marriage between siblings was not only acceptable but also considered necessary for the propagation of the human race at this initial stage of history. At that time, there were no explicit prohibitions against this form of union, and cultural circumstances and survival demands may have played a significant role in the acceptance of this peculiar custom. The absence of clear restrictions is illustrated by various cases in the biblical narrative where characters married members of their own families. These episodes reveal a cultural panorama in which marriage between siblings was not only a social norm but also a practice that contributed to the preservation and expansion of family lineages. In the context of the time, limitations in social interaction and population scarcity may have led communities to see marriage between siblings as a logical and necessary solution. This cultural peculiarity, though it may sound strange to contemporary standards, highlights the evolution of matrimonial practices throughout human history. As societies developed and ethical norms were refined, marriage between siblings ceased to be common. If you enjoy biblical stories, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and leave your like and to explore more about these fascinating narratives. The evolution of matrimonial practices is just one example of how cultural norms have changed over time. It shows how humanity adapted to its environment and the circumstances of its early existence. As we continue to study the story of Cain and his descendants, we find even more questions and mysteries. Who were these other people that Cain feared? Could there have been other families created by God? Or were there simply more children of Adam and Eve than are mentioned in the early chapters of Genesis? The Genesis account focuses primarily on key figures like Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, and Seth, but it does leave room for the possibility of other children. The mention of Adam having other sons and daughters after Seth suggests a much larger family, which fits the need for a growing human population. Understanding these possibilities opens up new avenues for interpreting the Bible. It invites us to consider the human experience in all its complexity, including the relationships and interactions that are not detailed in the scriptures. This broader view helps us appreciate the rich tapestry of human history and the divine plan for humanity. The narrative of Cain, marked by his tragic actions and subsequent punishment, is a profound example of human struggle and divine justice. Yet it also highlights themes of mercy and redemption. Despite his severe punishment, Cain's life continues, and he even establishes a city, indicating resilience and a desire to build a legacy. Exploring these stories, we see a reflection of our own struggles and the hope for redemption. The Bible provides not just a historical account, but also a deep well of spiritual and moral lessons that resonate across time. So, as we delve into these ancient texts, we gain insights into the human condition and the enduring questions that have shaped our understanding of life, morality, and our relationship with the divine. If these themes intrigue you, stay tuned for more stories and insights, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like.